Hasan Piker was detained and questioned at the border while returning from a vacation to France by Customs and Border Patrol. You may be asking yourself, why is this newsworthy? Stuff like this, whether you agree with it or not, does happen all the time. Hassan himself even felt this was a very real possibility of something that may happen to him when returning from France.
Once again, pre-watch Piker struck again. I remember I was joking about like what I foresaw would potentially happen as I entered the United States of America, and that thing that I foresaw happening actually ended up happening, and I'm obviously going to talk about it.
Now, why should you care about this? Without getting into whether or not I personally believe Customs and Border Patrol should have as much power as it does, what really raised red flags for me were the questions that Hassan was asked. They asked Hassan all sorts of questions about his political views, whether he liked Trump. They asked him questions about his Twitch bans, about comments he has made on Twitch. Now, no matter who you are, your opinion of the president, of his policies, of anything going on in the government really should not bar you access to the United States, especially if you are a United States citizen. It is important to remember that Hassan was detained, questioned, and then released. I don't think they ever had any real intention of arresting Hassan. Due to the circumstances, they would have known exactly who Hassan was, they would have known exactly when he was supposed to get there, and they would have been ready for him.
And it's the flight manifest that they get ahead of time. They knew who I was and they were ready to receive me, let's just say. And it wasn't a very warm welcome. So he knew exactly who the I was, but he was basically like broaching the conversation in a way where it was like free flowing, where in the process of discovery, he was adding on additional talking points. He always made it seem as though he was asking certain things that after discovering in the process of that conversation, he would ask additional questions. And he's like, oh, well, since you mentioned that, he kept saying, oh, well, since you mentioned that, what do you do as a job? And I was like, I'm a Twitch streamer. And he's like, well, since you mentioned that you were a Twitch streamer, what kind of things do you stream about? I play video games, but I also do current events, sometimes drama, internet. Since you mentioned that, you talk about the things that you talk about. Do you talk about the news? Do you talk about the war? He's like, do you talk about Trump? And that was the first time where I was like, what the is this question? Like, I literally straight up told him, I was like, why are you asking me this? I was like, what does this have to do with anything? The dude asked so many insane questions, none of which is illegal, by the way. I just need you to understand, nothing I've done online is illegal as of now.
DHS responded when asked to comment on the detainment, and I think their answer is pretty interesting. When asked for comment about Piker, a Department of Homeland Security official called his account nothing but lying for likes. Claims that his political beliefs triggered the inspection are baseless, Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement. Our officers are following the law, not agendas. Upon entering the country, this individual was referred for further inspection, a routine, lawful process that occurs daily and can apply for any traveler. Once his inspection was complete, he was promptly released. They don't deny that he was detained. They don't take issue with what he said he was questioned on. All they say is that it wasn't based on his politics. So, is this the new norm in DHS and in Customs and Border Patrol? Is it now normal to ask someone their opinions on Trump and their opinions on Israel? Are we now deciding whether or not people are let into this country based on their opinions of Israel, a state that is committing a genocide? Opposing genocide is now enough to get you detained and questioned and possibly considered barred from this country. I do think that this may be part of a larger goal to scare Hassan and people like Hassan into not criticizing the government as much as they have been. Because even if you don't like Hassan, even if you're someone who maybe leans in the direction that he has said some things that could be taken as support for terrorist groups, ultimately, those are still just opinions. And unless Hassan starts supplying material support to any of these groups, he is not violating any laws. Just like criticizing the president is not enough to keep you out of the country. There was an incident a few months ago where I believe a French researcher had criticized Trump's policies and he was not allowed into the country because of that. The president is reelected every 4 years. Criticizing the president is not anti American, it is not unpatriotic. It is well within your given rights by the Constitution of this fucking country. So you should care because you may not think it could happen to you now. You may not think it could happen to you under Trump, but that doesn't mean it could never happen to you. It doesn't even mean that if you never say anything spicy or anything that could be misconstrued in some way, that you're safe. They will find a way if they want to. That is how this works. The questions they asked Hasan were straight out of the mouths of slop tubers. They asked him about his Twitch bans. They asked him if he had ever interviewed a member of the Houthis, something the likes of Ethan Klein and Asmongold have used to try and attack Hasan on.
One thing that I will take note of that I thought was very interesting was the fact that a lot of the that like the Ethan Kleins of the world have like cried about over and over again were unironically brought up in that conversation. Like, did you interview a Houthi or was he actually a Houthi? And I was like, he's not. You can look to all of the reporting that came out afterwards and before I interviewed him that he's not a Houthi, that he is a regular Yemeni citizen. They asked me about my Twitch bans and I talked about blowback. Yeah, they asked me about my Twitch bans, chat. It's not even a joke. They asked me about Twitch bans. The other Twitch ban he asked me about was the last one that I got banned.
I do think that people painting Hasan as a terrorist supporter, as a terrorist lover of slop tubers, trying to deplatform him, because even if their goal is to get Hasan removed from Twitch, which is still insane, they want to deplatform him because they don't like what he says. Under this administration especially, that can lead to real world consequences. So either Hasan continues to speak his truth and speak what he believes in and suffers the consequences of that being people trying to deplatform him, or he allows himself to be bullied into silence, which I imagine he won't do and he shouldn't do. So, for anyone who wants to see Hasan Piker deplatformed and removed from Twitch, I want to make this very clear. You're a fucking Fed. You have aligned yourself with the federal government, with the Trump administration, with conservatives, with the right, and you are carrying out their agenda to see prominent left wing figures deplatformed. You are not fighting any system, you are a tool of the system, and a pathetic one at that.
And I genuinely, in that moment, was thinking, like, these dumbass slop tubers are actually playing with fire. The reality of the matter is, 100%, the Trump administration is inadvertently working with a lot of these dip are playing a formative role in getting people in trouble with the law. This administration doesn't care. That's why they work with Beitar. That's why they work with all these other insane groups. The Barry Weisses of the world actually have motion in this goddamn admin.
People like Asmongold are already trying to make it seem like Hasan is overreacting and blaming him specifically and making it seem like he made the call to get him detained. That's not what Hasan is saying here. Hasan is saying that this administration is so incompetent and so bad faith that it will latch on to anything, even the unsubstantiated, unproven accusations coming out of the mouths of these slop tubers. But if I have to look on the bright side of all of this, if these slop tubers are as logical and common sense as they say they are, then this should put to rest any accusations of Hasan being a dangerous terrorist supporter. He was detained, interrogated, and then released. The Customs and Border Patrol agents do not seem to think that Hasan is a dangerous terrorist supporter, and they certainly didn't see fit to detain him for any extended period of time. So, unless the Customs and Border Patrol agents are woke now and just letting anybody into the country, which I doubt that's the argument these slop tubers are going to make, the conclusion they should come to is that Hasan is not a dangerous terrorist supporter who needs to be kept out of the country, or who needs to be detained or arrested in any way, shape, or form. But I suspect they are not as logical as they claim they are, and they will not, in fact, come to that conclusion. And with that being said, I'm going to end the video here. So, thank you for watching. If you liked it, give it a like for me. Feel free to let me know your thoughts down below, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on my other videos. Stay safe out there, have a good day, and goodbye.